I went back and played Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Yeah, that one. The 2024 holy shit, this came out in 2024. The 2024 disaster that became the poster child for live service disasters, dropping in price in probably the fastest I have ever seen. But was it as bad as everyone said, or is it just another victim of live service burnout? I replayed the campaign, tried out some of the endgame, and even grinded some of the last season to get an answer. My name is Bri, and join me as we figure out if Suicide Squad is worth playing today, and should you play it. And for those of you that have played the game, what did you think of it at the time, and what keeps you coming back? But without further ado, let's get into the video. Now, much like Avengers, when this first came out, I didn't hate it as much as everybody else did. I quite enjoyed the story mode, and again, just like Avengers, once you finish the story mode, it just turns into this pseudo Destiny sort of game, and I do not understand the fascination of this time with taking what would be a pretty good superhero story game and then shoehorning in a live service mode to get people to spend more money whenever I feel like people would have spent more money if you just made a good single player game, but that's beside the point. We're going to jump into the single player campaign and we're going to see if it actually holds up or if I was just being a little naive at the time. One thing I'll immediately notice is that it is quite a fun game to play. The shooting and the melee combat is incredibly smooth. Everything works together. I can see exactly what they were trying to go for. And while the characters in this one don't feel as unique as they do in Avengers, their traversal abilities, their melee, and their guns change, while you're still keeping the same third-person shooter gameplay between the characters, you definitely will have a favorite. As I play through this, I'm not hating my time with it. I have fun with the characters, and I know some people have problems with some of the story decisions. It all gets explained in the seasonal story, which is definitely a con towards this story, because not a lot of people are going to want to grind through endless amounts of the same content, but we'll get there. So I found the superhero boss fights to be quite fun, especially Batman's, which was kind of this reverse role of Arkham. The story finally takes us to Braniac, where we get our first fight with him. And after killing him, we learn there are like 12 other Braniacs, which starts the post game, which is where this will make or break it for you. Now, I'm going to take a side tangent here. If you're just looking at this game as the campaign, just playing that, I do think this game is pretty well worth like $10 or whatever I got it for. It's honestly not that bad of a campaign. You have a lot of fun. You get 4 friends. It can be a really good time. The gameplay's really tight. The boss fights are awesome. I enjoy all that. I just don't understand the need for it to be a live service game. But we're going to figure out if that part of the game holds up as well as I think the main game does. So I went back to my save from whenever I beat the game for the first time back whenever it came out, and I had actually grinded quite a bit of the post game just because I enjoyed the gameplay so much. And I'm going to start out as Captain Boomerang because he was my favorite at launch, and it'll probably be easy for me to get back in the rhythm of the post game by doing that. So the first thing I did is I jumped into one of these dimensional rifts, which is kind of the main thing you're doing. You're going into this Earth 2, doing these missions and getting out with loot. And this one was kind of a survival. There wasn't really an objective other than just you kill enemies to extend a timer and it gets harder and harder. It was a nice, simple objective for me to get started. Now, eventually I failed, and I don't know if this was due to a skill issue, could be, or if I just got unlucky with enemy spawns, but eventually, I just couldn't find any more enemies in the time to extend the timer, so eventually I failed. I don't know if that was just the game artificially trying to be like, hey, you're at the end now, but I extracted, I got some loot that wasn't better than anything that I already had, so just immediately got rid of it, and then I decided to hop over to Deadshot. Now, going from my favorite character to my least favorite. Deadshot, I'm just not a big fan of his traversal. I find his jetpack gameplay to be extremely slow. I don't like sitting up in the air. His guns are more focused on single shot, high damage. You can use ARs, but a lot of the ones I have just do not have the DPS to compete. So for Deadshot, I decided to hop over into some seasonal content, which in this case was the Joker season. And this starts my problem with the end game and the postseason stuff is you're doing mostly the same thing. It's all around killing the same enemies you've been fighting since the beginning of the game. So for the Joker season, I was excited for a new environment. You get a new dimension to go in through the Nexus. And whenever I get there, it is just a reskinned Earth 2 Metropolis, but with like Joker themed stuff. And yeah, it's cool looking, I guess. Like I appreciate the environmental artists here, but in terms of actual content and replayability here. This doesn't feel any different gameplay-wise to what I've been doing in the normal post-game before this season launched, so I was a little disappointed there. For this objective, I had to go into the Joker dimension and take down a big turret for some reason, and it mostly revolved around killing enemies, picking up the little things they drop, and then throwing it at the turret and shooting said turret whenever you do. So not that engaging of gameplay, but the gameplay is fun, so it wasn't a bad time per se, but it just didn't feel any different to what I had already been doing. And now moving on to Harley Quinn. So for her, I decided to jump into one of the Mrs. Freeze seasons. I went past the mastery level that I was at, and the loot I got was still worse than the loot that I already had. So the looter shooter part in this game is just not holding up that well for me. I find the game fun to play, but there's not really that much of a reason for me to want to go do any of this content that they have added. Most of the gameplay is about the same post game. You're just going in, doing these incursions and getting out and not really getting loot that's worth it. You're kind of just chasing these gear sets, and that's really about it. But by the time you get the gear sets, there's not much in terms of end game other than ramping up the difficulty of missions that you've already done. So I can't really recommend this on the basis of looter shooter other than if you just enjoy these characters and you enjoy the gameplay. So now I'm going to grind out this season, go fight this Braniac and get Deathstroke and try him out, and we'll see if my thoughts change after that. So to unlock Deathstroke, you have to get to level 25 and complete a series of missions in his respective season. Now, Harley Quinn has been my favorite I played as so far, so I went through the season as her, and it was pretty monotonous to unlock the character. You can just spend money to get him, but if there's an option between just grinding something for a little bit and not, I'm not going to spend any money, especially more. It would cost me more to buy Deathstroke than it did to buy the game. So I chose to do the hard way and grind the game out. And my experience is it's just repetitiveness. You do the same mission type. They have these quote unquote different missions, but all the missions boil down to is just killing people. I mean, as you can see, it is just the same mission. Like you would think each one is the same mission. So I resolved to just do the survival ones. They leveled you up the quickest, especially if you got to like round 70, was definitely the fastest. And then finally, at the end, when you do get to 25 and you've completed all the seasonal missions, you can do a Braniac kill mission, which is how each of the seasonal stories kind of end. And for this one, since it was the 7th season, they just did this. So now I finally have Deathstroke, and I'm not the biggest fan of him. His movement abilities are all right. They kind of just reminded me of Spider-Man almost in a way. So like whenever you do his grapple, you kind of just lose all momentum once you get to the place you're at. And it kind of reminded me of Spider-Man in Avengers. You should go watch that video if you haven't. And I just didn't enjoy as much as playing as Harley and swinging around as her, or, even boomerang and using his speed boomerang. His movement abilities in this weren't as fun. He had a cool like dodge ability. So I went into the Mrs. Freeze season because I wanted to see about unlocking her. And again, I found some of the levels to be very similar to ones I had played before. Gameplay wise, it's still just killing things. Not much has changed there in terms of objectives. They did, however, have the domination objective. Little reference to Avengers there. I don't understand the fascination with hero shooters and having Call of Duty objectives as their own objectives to be the only thing to shake up from killing, but the only cool thing of note that I found different in this season was you had to swap between like dimensions to be able to damage certain enemies. You'd only damage certain ones if you're in like the ice dimension, and then you had to swap back to get the normal enemies. That was a little cool and added a little bit of challenge, but it never really amounted to any worthwhile difficulty. It was just kind of a gimmick that was used in like one of the missions I did in the Mrs. Freeze season. And so honestly, I don't have a lot of integrity here. I'm going to be honest with you. I just gave up. This game, while it is fun, I can only take so much of it. It is very, very monotonous, and the gameplay is fun, but only to a certain extent. So, is this game worth playing today, and should you play it? I mean, if you find it on sale like I did for like $3, the main story is honestly not that bad. The gameplay's fun enough for the length of the main story. It's just once you get to that end game, I don't know if it holds up enough to be this looter shooter thing they were wanting it to be. And looking around, that seems to be the sentiment for most people. I'm definitely nicer on this game than I think a lot of people are. I think it gets overhated. I don't think it is as bad as like Avengers or Gotham Knights, which I sadly will be playing next to complete this superhero looter shooter trilogy that I am deciding to put myself through. But those are my thoughts on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. If you enjoyed the video, leave a comment, subscribe. I'm always making videos on older games that probably shouldn't just be made, but I'm always forcing myself to play older games for some reason. But if that's something you enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.